Today I'm baking at home and I'm making a wonderful sourdough loaf. So to begin with, you're going to need to have a sourdough starter. And we started our starter about 8 days ago. And it's nice and bubbly and we tested it. It floats in water and it smells totally like sourdough bread. So we've put some warm water into a bowl. That's 1¼ cups of warm water, and then we're adding about a cup of starter. And then you want to just stir and get that combined. In another video, I show you how to make sourdough starter, so be sure to check that out if you need to. I also have a recipe for sourdough starter on my website. Now I'm going to add flour, and I'm doing this without a machine, but you could use a stand mixer with a dough hook to combine these ingredients together. But I'm using bread flour. I'm going to use 3½ cups of bread flour. You could use all-purpose flour, but I think bread flour gives it a better texture. And then I'm going to put in 1/2 cup of whole wheat flour. Now you want to give it a good stir. Make sure you're incorporating all the flour into the water. We don't want to knead the dough at this point. Right now we're just trying to hydrate the flour. Now you can get in and knead, but again, be careful because we don't want to overwork this dough. We just want it to come together into one ball. Now I'm transferring that dough to a straight-sided, really large measuring cup, and I'm letting it rest for about 10 minutes before doing my first series of folds. So I'm going to just fold the dough over itself and kind of use my knuckles to give it a little knead, but I don't want to over knead this dough. So I'm going to do about 20 folds, and then I'm going to cover the oversized measuring cup with a towel, and I'm going to let it sit for 20 minutes, and I'm going to do this 4 times. And I like using this particular measuring cup because it has straight sides and I can see easily when the dough has doubled in size. You can get a large clear container also to keep your dough in. Those work really well. 20 minutes later, I'm doing another series of folds, and you'll see that the dough is tacky. I wouldn't call it quite sticky, but it is tacky. It's moist, but there's not a lot of residue left, or if any, in the bottom of that measuring cup. So 20 times, you want to pull, and you really want to use your knuckles, there you go, or the heel of your hand, and then cover and let it sit for another 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, we're doing our third fold. This is such a long process, I understand, but it is so worth it when you make your own loaf of gorgeous sourdough bread. It's totally worth it. So we're going to do 20 more, pull and fold and knuckle, and then cover that. And now the last series of folds, 20 minutes later, pull, knuckle it 20 times. Now you want to let this rest, and this could take anywhere from 12 to 24 hours until the dough is doubled in size. You can see that mine is way more than double, which actually is not good because it weakens the dough, but this bread actually came out wonderful anyway. So I'm going to push down that dough. It should feel very moist, and again, this could take all day, depending on how cold your kitchen is. That's why I put it in the oven with the oven light on, just the oven light. And I left it in there after it already sat out for 12 hours. It didn't have the growth that I was looking for because my kitchen was cold at the time. So I put it in the oven with the oven light on for about 4 more hours, and then poof, it looked gorgeous. So now again, I'm just folding the dough, and I'm going to use a bench scraper so that I can make a tight ball. I want to get this into a tight ball so that I can let it rest one more time before it does its final proof. So either using your hands or a dough scraper. And notice I didn't put any flour on my work surface. You don't want to add flour if you don't have to, because again, that also will weaken your dough. And we're just going to let that rest for about 10 minutes while we get our tea towel ready. So I have a flour sack towel, And I'm going to sprinkle it generously with flour because I don't want my dough to stick to that bowl. If you have a proofing basket, this would be great. They usually come with like a linen liner or some kind of towel like this that you use to put the dough in, and then there's a really pretty pattern that gets indented into the dough, but I don't have one. I actually ordered one on Amazon, but it won't be here for quite a while. So I'm just putting that dough with the nice smooth side face down because that's going to be the top of my loaf, and I'm just making sure that I've got enough flour so things don't stick. Now this has to proof for 4 hours. So again, we're kind of looking to make sure that the dough almost fills the bowl and doubles in size. You can see it right there. Now I'm taking a piece of parchment paper and a plate so that I can invert that bowl and I can get my loaf ready to put in a casserole dish. I'm using a casserole baker, but you could use a Dutch oven or just a pot, a chili pot or soup pot. Look at how beautifully round that is. And I'm getting a knife ready. I actually, right before I cut it, I sharpened it on a steel, because if you have a sharp knife, it makes cutting your dough a lot easier. If you don't, you're gonna make a mess of your dough. So you need to make sure you're using a really sharp knife. There you can see I'm sharpening it. Some people use like a straight edge razor, but I just sharpened my knife and oh my gosh, this sliced beautifully. I was actually kind of surprised. So you can see me there sharpening. Make any design you want. I'm just gonna put a simple cross. Look at that. Oh my gosh, it was beautiful. And now I'm going to carefully lift up the parchment paper and put it into my casserole dish. I'm so excited that I have a use for this. It's been sitting in my pantry for a long time. I don't usually use it, but now it's my official bread baker. And what this allows the bread to do is steam. It creates steam, so you end up with a very nice moist loaf, but also a crispy crust. This bakes at 480 degrees for 45 minutes. Then you take the lid off and you let it continue baking for another 15 minutes. And after that, so it's an hour of total baking, it's gonna look gorgeous like this. You're gonna wanna cut and eat it right away, but don't do that. It really should sit for an hour. You have to let it rest, put it on a wire rack, and let it cool down for about an hour. You're gonna take the paper off. You wanna check to hear for that hollow sound by flipping the loaf over and just knocking it with your knuckles. Although I'm not really sure why we do this step, because what happens if it doesn't sound hollow? We're not gonna put it back in the oven, right? But actually this one sounded perfect. So now it's time to slice, put some butter and a little honey on it, or cut it up for some sandwiches. And this bread is spectacular. For this recipe and more, visit myclasscancook.com.